Hey gang, welcome to another edition of Sony Simplified. My name is Ken, and I'm excited to bring you the first steps in setting up your brand new Sony Alpha camera. Before we get started, I need two favors from you. I know, kind of needy, right? One, please take an opportunity to like, subscribe, smash that notification bell to stay up to date on all the latest content that we have coming, including content that in the past you've said you wanted to see. And a little bit more about that later. Number two, while you're here, drop some comments, questions, suggestions in the chat or in the comment section. We'd love to be able to hear from you. And if I have an opportunity to answer any of them, as many of them as I can during the live session, I'll do that. So I really appreciate it. All right, so I tell you what, let's get started. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. Let's put that up on the screen. Okay. So before I preface, let me preface this by saying this. What we're going to talk about today may be very common for most of you who are already accustomed to photography. But what I want to focus on are some of the guys that this is their first camera. And for those of you, for those of you who are graduating from probably a perfectly capable cell phone to being able to use your camera for all your image capture, content creation, I want to make sure that we elevate your confidence and reduce your anxiety as you switch over to using a camera. I think that's going to be very important. So we're going to preface it with that, okay? So let's get started. Here are the topics we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about pre-setup. We're going to talk about photo and video quality settings. And then we've got another section where we'll talk about some additional settings and features on your camera that don't get a lot of exposure and probably some that should get some exposure. So we'll talk about that as well. So I tell you what, let's go ahead and get started. So pre-setup, you've charged your battery, you've selected the language, and you have done your time, checked your time, put your time in. First place we want to go, memory card. Now I say, well, why is that important? So just hear me out. We want to make sure that you start off with a 64 gig class 10 U3 or class 10 V30 or 60 at very minimum memory card. Those are going to be the labels you'll see on the card. Let me tell you why that's important. First of all, you can't shoot 4K without 64 gig card. So right off the bat. Number two, if you want to take advantage of many of the fast shooting functions of the camera, right? You want to make sure that you have a card that can read and write fast enough to be reading and writing the next image and waiting for the next image to come in. So we want to make sure that you take full advantage of what your camera is capable of. So make sure you have the right type of memory card. Okay, that's going to be critical. So I'll be using a Sony ZV-E10 for our model today. So I'm going to show you the back of the camera. And this is important because I want you to feel comfortable with looking at the back of your camera and understanding what's on the back of your camera. So first of all, you've got your menu button at the top right, your FN or function button, and we're going to pay close attention to that, more on that in just a minute. And you have your display wheel that you can use to adjust functions while you're shooting. Now you've got the display button at the top, ISO, exposure, and the ability to go straight to your shoot mode, all from the display wheel. And let's not forget the review button, which is the forward arrow, and then the trash can. So on Vlogger series cameras, the trash can doubles as turning on your product showcase function. So we don't want to not look at that, and it's not just for delete. The other thing I wanted to mention is if in fact you have purchased an Alpha 7 Mark IV and Alpha 7 Mark III, your menu button is going to be on the left, not on the right, but no worries, no problem at all. So I just want to make sure that you're familiar with your buttons, and then we'll get to the function as well, right? So the next thing we want to talk about in the pre-setup category, let's go ahead and put that up on the screen, pardon me, is the ability to make sure that you know how to update your firmware. What you're looking at on screen now is a snapshot of the Sony support page. So the Sony support page will give you access and the ability to find your product, in this case, a camera, and be able to find out whether or not it needs a firmware update. It will even show you how to check firmware updates on your phone. Firmware updates on your camera. And by all you have to do is simply look at the screen and go, well, my number is smaller than the number on the screen. Well, if that's the case, then you need an update, right? So really cool things that we want to make sure that you start off with before we really kind of dive into what's going on. I believe that's where we're going to end that portion. Let's check the chat, see how we're doing here. Got someone says, always helpful. Well, thanks. Really appreciate that. We want to make sure this is a conversation and not just a download. So if you've got anything extra you want to throw in there, feel free. We certainly appreciate it. So awesome. So as we're moving along, again, I'm going to use the ZVE10 as my model. I want to go into video and photo imaging, quality images, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the camera. I want you to be able to see the menu system on the back of the camera. And we'll go through just a few things that I think will help set up early those first steps so that you can get out there and have some fun with your camera, right? Because after all, that's what we want to do. We want to have fun with the camera. We want to give you what you need. Remember, we talked about that confidence level, right? To be able to keep the phone in your pocket and the camera in your hand, right? So that's where we want to be. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this on and hit the menu. So great. So quality image. So let's take a look at the first four. Really, really simple. File format, JPEG quality, JPEG image, and aspect. And I apologize if I'm looking in a different direction. When you're doing HDMI out, the menu doesn't show up on the back of the camera. So I'm looking at a screen so I can follow along. So just bear with me on that. So file format, as a beginner, go ahead and shoot in JPEG, right? The reason why we want to do that is because we're really not sure what software you're using, and we're really not sure whether or not the software that comes with the computer that you're going to use will be able to resolve raw files. So I'd like you to go ahead and shoot in JPEG. However, while we're talking about it, just real quickly, what's the difference? So RAW gives you a bigger file to work with. It gives you more data to work with. So if you are using software that can indeed resolve raw files, such as Sony's Imaging Edge software, you can shoot in RAW and give yourself more points to be able to use in order to edit your photo. So that's really important. But for right now, for our first steps, let's go ahead and stick with JPEG, okay? JPEG quality. Well, extra fine, of course. This is a Sony camera. Let's put this thing to work, right? Let's go ahead and do that. JPEG size really quickly. So this is a 24 megapixel camera, but it also does 12 megapixels as well as 6. Now, why is that important? Of course, you want to shoot in 24 all the time, but there may be times in which 12 or 6 is going to be important. Let's say that you have to send something via email or text, or maybe within a presentation, and the 24 megapixel size may simply be too big, and that's okay. The cool thing about shooting in 12 or 6 is even though the megapixel size is smaller, the dynamic range is still the same. You're still shooting with a Sony camera, so you still get the pop that you're looking for your content, but maybe not the size that you necessarily need to send it via email or something like that. So aspect ratio, keep it in 3:2. 3:2 just simply covers the entire sensor. So wherever you are and whatever you're doing, whatever you're shooting, the sensor is always going to be active so that you can focus on what you're looking for. So keep it in 3x2. No need to move it to 16:9 or 1x1 unless there's some specific reason, such as your software can't read 3x2. But I don't think that's ever going to be a problem, right? So keep it in 3x2. So this would be the first set of first steps, right? Step 1, 2, 3, 4 is where we want you to be when setting up your brand new camera. So let's continue on in this setting and let's move over to eye autofocus. This may be defaulted to off. You want to turn eye autofocus on. You also want to make sure that your face eye frame display is on. Now, you have the ability to choose between human and animal. That's really kind of cool. And I usually leave it in auto, left or right. So depending on what eye the camera is catching, just let it decide unless there's something specific that you want done. But here's the reason why I want you to leave face and eye frame display on. When you're shooting and you're unfocused, especially a person or an animal, if it loses focus on the eye, it'll still put a box around the face of the subject, which means it's letting you know I still have focus. I may not have the eye, but I still have focus. That's good, especially when you're a beginner, so that you know that you're not going to miss your shot. Now, as you get more advanced, you'll find that you can do a whole lot of things with that eye autofocus. But for right now, let's make sure we keep that on for you. Again, it's all about building that confidence, going out and having some fun with that camera. All right. So let's back out of there, and we're almost done, I believe. Yeah, I think we're done with that part. I'll get to some other parts when I talk about the function button. So now let's get into video. So we're going to click on video, and let's see if we can get over to the video section. And just a few connections right here. One, file format. Of course, you want to shoot in 4K. I don't think I really need to say anything else about that. 2, your record setting. Now, 30p, which is what we're in right now, very natural, very broadcast-like. 24p, maybe a little more cinematic, depending on what it is that you're trying to shoot. The important thing here is between 60 millibits and 100 millibits. What I want you to understand there is we're giving you the option. 60 is just fine. But if you want more data to use in your video for whatever reason, for whatever creativity you're trying to accomplish, you can use that by moving it over to 100. Now, 100 takes up a whole lot more space on your memory card. But as long as you understand that, I think you'll be okay. I really do think you'll be okay. But that's the difference. And it's more of an FYI for you when you come up to this page and you go, Ken, I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at, right? So finally, you want to go to steady shot. Now, for those of you who have an Alpha 7 IV, Alpha 7 III, or any of the full frame cameras, you have built-in image body stabilization, which of course can be turned off. But in cameras such as this, the Vlogger series cameras, as well as some of the A6000 or Alpha 6000 series cameras, the steady shot is digital. So you have standard steady shot and you have active steady shot. I would encourage you to use active. Active is a little more stabilizing, especially if you are moving, whether you're on the move vlogging or chasing a kid around the yard or whatever. It's a little bit more stable, but it does take a little bit of crop off the sensor. So your face comes a little bit further into the frame and you lose a little bit of texture and things like that around you. So you have to decide whether or not, and standard doesn't do that. So you have to decide whether or not standard or active is right for you. I would encourage you to use active, practice with active. And I think once you get the hang of active, which is really not a big difference between the two, but you will see a difference. It may not be enough to say, no, I'm going to go to standard. So let's leave it in active, okay? And honestly, that's really about it from a photo and video standpoint. Again, those are first steps. Now you've got your camera set up to be able to utilize some of the features and functions that you bought the camera for in the first place, okay? Now we want to go to the function button. Let's talk about that function button. Very, very important. The function button stores some quick access to things that you're probably wanting to change on the fly or not have to dig through the menu to find. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the, I'm going to go back into the screen. Do a little, and we are going to click the function button. See if we can't get that on. Appreciate your patience. Thanks so much. There we go, function button. So now we're going to talk about these three at the top and the bottom right one in just a second. Drive mode. Here's where you're going to change from single shot to maybe needing a timer, right? So maybe there's something that you want to take a picture of that you don't want to shake the camera. So you've got 2 seconds, 5 seconds, and 10 seconds. But I want to focus on right here, continuous shooting. Remember, we talked about having the right kind of memory card that will allow you continuous shooting. So now you have the ability, continuous shooting low, mid, high, and high plus. That could be great for catching that moment at a sporting event. That could be great at, again, chasing the kids around the yard. So there's multiple different reasons why you might want that, and having the right memory card allows you to be able to have access to it. So that's another reason why we want to make sure that memory card is where it needs to be. Focus mode. This is your autofocus. As you know, Sony's got great autofocus. AFS, single shot, taking a picture of something that's not moving. Autofocus automatic, that's letting the camera decide for you where the focus point should be. That could be pretty beneficial when you're first starting out. But where I'd like you to put it is autofocus continuous. So continuous, the little dancing dots, if you haven't already noticed on your camera, allow you to be able to track something that's moving, or if you are moving, or both. I think this is probably more forgiving than using single shot, because if you focus in on something on single shot, if you move, it still only focuses on that shot. You've got to repress the shutter button to reacquire. Here with continuous focus, you don't have to do that. So again, let's try to get you what you need to get out there and have some fun with your camera. And then your focus area. So how much of the frame am I going to use? So Y takes advantage of the entire sensor. So once again, I'm going to have all my pixels be ready to focus on whatever it is I want them to do. As you get better, you might consider zone. Now here's what's cool about zone. I can move the zone anywhere I want. I can actually move the zone. So maybe I don't necessarily want dead center, okay? Maybe I don't necessarily want dead center. I can move the zone to where I think is best. Now, if you notice that a lot of the slots are grayed out. And the reason for that is because we're in automatic. So those grayed out functions, picture profile, creative style, white balance, are all grayed out because the camera will decide for you while you're out taking a picture. As you begin to practice and have some fun and really understand how to use your camera, when you change it to another mode, let's just say aperture priority, for example, and we go back to function, look at that. They're open. So now you have a little bit more say-so in your creativity. So I just want to let you know that if you click the function button and for whatever reason it's grayed out, that's why. It's grayed out simply because you are in auto. So that's an example of the function button. And I think that's very, very important while you're using it as your photography, because you don't always want to go back into the menu. Let the function button do its work for you. So let me take a second and check the chat, see how we're doing. Great tip on the eye autofocus. Thank you, Yugi. That's absolutely right. We do a great job of eye autofocus, and you can let the camera decide. And it's important to have it turned on at all times, unless you're out in street photography, let's say, that's a great point. If you're out in street photography and you want to take pictures of buildings and things like that, and there are people that are obviously walking on the street, you can go in and turn off eye autofocus and turn off face detection so that it's no longer hunting for the next person in the frame. So I'm glad you brought that question up, because that allowed me to tell the audience that. Thanks a lot. Let's see. When I'm using my Sony ZV-E10 to record talking head videos while sitting at my desk from time to time, every second or so, the focus will rethink if my face is in focus. Well, Richard, the question I have is if you are using continuous, or do you have it on single? Because continuous may be what you need in order for it to continue looking at you and not decide, I wonder what he's doing. But you know what? I'll get a better answer for that, because I think that's what's happening, but I'll be glad to get the answer. That's a great question, and we will get the answer for that. Thanks for the great insight. Awesome. Hey, Tom, how are you? Welcome back to the channel. What's a good default setting to use? You said, what default setting are you speaking of, video or pictures or photo? So hard to say with default. So let's see if he answers. Give him a second answer. So difficult to say if you're using video. I mean, auto is always the right thing to do, but I think as you get much better, you'll be able to really put your own creative style, your own creative look. Photo, okay. So if you're talking about a default setting, what we're talking about here is, again, for those who are taking their first steps, we're putting it in auto. I do tell you that once you have graduated from auto, probably the best setting to put it in would be aperture priority, right? Aperture priority gives you the ability to control the light on your iris on your lens and let the camera decide your shutter speed and your ISO. I think that would be the next graduation, so to speak, from using auto. I think that's a great question if that's what you're asking. I think aperture priority might be the graduating point until we move eventually, possibly to manual or not. Totally your choice. Totally your choice. All righty. So let's keep going. Thanks for the questions and thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. All right. So next, we're going to talk about some of those settings that don't necessarily and always come up, right? Those are the settings that I think give new photographers the biggest pain point. So let's talk about those. We're going to put those up on the screen. We'll go from there. So the first one is your touch, right? Your touch settings. So all the new cameras have the ability to touch for focus and even touch for the menu. We want to make sure that your touch sensor is on and that it's on focus, so that you have the ability to touch the back of the camera so that you can touch to where you need to focus. Touch shutter works in video, and you also have, touch tracking works in video. You also have touch shutter. Now, I got fat thumbs, and I will tell you, touching the back of the lens or the screen in order to take the picture isn't anything new, but I'm not very good at it. But it's there if you want it. So you have that ability to do that. So I think that's one that we don't talk about enough, and we should. Next one. Next one is going to be file. Not real, like, okay, file, what's that mean? So in photo or in video, your camera has the ability to categorize your content by either series, one after the other, or date. I think date would be the best place to start. So photo, put it in date, take it out of standard, take it out of series. In video, put it under date and title. Just think about it. You've just come back from a long vacation with the family, and you're trying to remember, I took this picture of this, but when? Well, having everything on the memory card by date makes it really easy for you to go back and look at it and find what you're looking for. Because after all, you're already used to it. Your phone already does that, right? Have your camera do that, right? So let's go to the next one. Release without lens, release without card. Team, we want to make sure these are both disabled. Here's why. Release without lens simply means that you won't accidentally activate the shutter when you're changing lenses if you haven't turned off the camera. Release without card keeps you from taking pictures when there's no memory card in there. So by show of hands, how many people have ever done that? Right here, I'll be the first to tell you. So by disabling them, you won't have that problem. You'll always know that you have a memory card because the camera is going to say, hold on. And you'll never have to worry about activating the shutter when there's no lens there. Now, I know this is kind of first step. You might ask, well, why would I want to enable with lens? Well, there are quite a few fantastic manual only lenses that you can connect to your Sony camera. And without telling the camera there's a lens there, it will never take the picture because it's always looking for autofocus. But remember, with a manual lens, you're doing everything yourself. So you got to tell the camera, hey, I'll take care of it. Just make sure you fire the shutter when I fire the button. Okay. So we want to make sure we do that. And finally,
you can transfer full resolution photos and high-bit video files up to 4K resolution.
We want to make sure that
you can transfer full resolution photos and high-bit video files up to 4K resolution. This will help you can transfer full resolution photos and high-bit video files up to 4K resolution. This will help you can transfer full resolution photos and high-bit video files up to 4K resolution. This will help you can transfer full resolution photos and high-bit video files up to 4K resolution. This will help you can transfer full resolution photos and high-bit video.
You can. We're talking about a camera. You graduated. Let's keep going with the camera. So that's really, really cool. The other part about that is think about you have been designated as the family photographer, right? But you're never in any of the pictures. What if you connected your phone to the camera? Using the Creators app, you actually see what's on the camera on your phone. So now you have the ability to get everybody together and snap the photo. So not only do you have a great photo, but you're in it. How cool is that? Doesn't sound like much, and I don't think we talk about that enough, but I think we've all been there, right? Family photographer, and I'm never in the photo. So use Bluetooth. And on the other side of that, there's in the Bluetooth setting, there's airplane mode. So think about your airplane mode like this. Now that you've set up Bluetooth and connect to smartphone, your camera's always looking for your phone. But if you're not doing that, then you're draining battery. By turning on airplane mode, it blocks that. So now you can do whatever you need to do, have some fun shooting. And when you're not connecting it to your phone, you're preserving battery life, right? Really, really cool stuff there. And if you turn off airplane mode, hit the button on the connector, on the Creators app, guess what? You're up and running. You're up and running. So that's about all I got to say about that. Let's see what we're doing. Man, we are loaded. Great point. Yeah, just changed the folder setting on my Alpha 7 Mark III. Yep, man on the moon. I'm telling you, you can't beat that, right? Why go through a series of DCS.jpj. Why? Don't have to do that, right? Absolutely done that before, says Kirsten. Yep. All righty. Can you focus on the photo using the app with Bluetooth? Yes, you can, Kirsten. You absolutely can. So the Creator app will give you some a limited amount of functions, almost like your function button on the back of the camera on the app, so that you can actually change some settings that you'll need on the fly. So it's not going to be complete control, but the answer to that is yes. You certainly can. You certainly can. All right, so we're doing good. We're doing good. So that's about all I have for that section. That's about all I have. So let's recap what we've talked about. Did we give you enough for pre-setup? Did we make you feel good about using your photo and video settings? And more importantly, how do you feel about the extra important settings? Kind of like I call them the settings that don't get enough airtime, right? So listen, I know that's not everything, and that's okay. That really is okay, but we're not going to leave you stranded. If you are subscribed to the Sony Connect channel, you have an opportunity to have access to what we'll call the Connect playlist. So going to the Sony Connect channel allows you to be able to see podcasts, previous live streams, product announcements, product training, and a lot of things on there that we may or may not have covered. including some really great content from many of my colleagues. For example, we have a whole episode on just JPEG versus RAW. That's cool. We have an episode on making sure that you can craft your menu to what you want. Yes, your camera can do that. We didn't go through it, but it can do that. How cool is that? Creative looks, which is really a fun one. That seems to be very popular as you decide what kind of style that you want. And we also have one that allows you to learn how to put your camera, use your camera as a webcam. So how cool is that? So we don't leave you behind. So speaking of not leaving you behind, as we begin the wrap, let's talk about some topics that you may want to talk about, you may want us to discuss later. Here's a few right here. Would you like us, I'm going to read them off to you because it's hard for me to see. Just bear with me just a second here. Would you like us to talk about what lens would be right for you? Would you like a discussion on memory card basics? So we touched on memory card, but we'll take a whole chapter on just memory card. Would you like us to talk about how easy it is to transfer your photos? Or the wild card, drop something in there and tell us what you would like, right? Because we want to make this more of a conversation than a download. So that's always important. So team, as we start to wrap it up, I've got one little bit of housekeeping. If you've just recently bought a Sony product and you have not registered it, please make sure you register your product. Take advantage of the perks of registration, including easier updates for your warranty information, a really cool promos and things that we do for people that are registered. And remember when I told you about how do you know when you have a firmware update? Well, when you're registered, we send you an email. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Exactly. So register your product, okay? We'd really appreciate it. Gang, that's my time. This has been another edition of Sony Simplified. We'll see you in the next one.